Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
Welcome to the Lair. We are in our first Laircast of 2013. Some of our listeners thought that maybe we'd stop doing the Laircast because we took a bit of a hiatus for a couple months. We've been busy.
Holidays.
Stuff had been going, so we took 6 months of holidays.
6 months?
I think so.
Wow.
We've been busy.
No wonder Terry looks old.
So welcome to the conversation. You know, I'm excited. I'm excited because
Just lob it out. I intend to hit it out.
and Terry did come here last summer, and half of his audio dropped off. We tried to fix it, didn't work out, so he's being very gracious, and Terry Cooke has said, I'll do another Laircast.
Well, in fact, before we do that, I do have a small presentation, because I thought it rather passing peculiar that of all the people you've had on the Lair and all the times you've recorded in here, that only once in your history did the tape magically evaporate.
Yes.
And it, is a bit of a conspiracy theorist.
It's twice. It happened
I
twice.
thought
Yeah.
maybe, just maybe, because of the content of the tape, Laura had called in Haldeman and Ehrlichman. So,
What was the content that you said that was so bad last time? I remember you and Lauren got in a bit of a fight.
you of all people would appreciate a copy of Conrad Black's Nixon biography, autographed by Conrad in the courtroom in Chicago.
Wow.
You can borrow it. You can't keep it. It's one of my favorite
Thank you.
Wow.
That, you know what? And I appreciate that.
Richard Nixon would appreciate this moment.
Do you know what? He would. And, we didn't erase the Nixon tapes. What happened was, and it happened to Tom Cooper once, and Tom Cooper said it was a conspiracy against, people who were trying to prevent poverty. So we had to have him back for a mulligan in our first year, remember?
You have had a guest who you just threw the tape away. It wasn't audio trouble.
Who was that? No, I didn't throw it away. We decided not to air it because it was lame, super lame.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that. I'm not going to say now because then they'll want us to
We're
air
not
it.
going to give him that kind
Don't want
of...
to do
won't.
over.
It was super lame, but he did get to talk a lot in another Laircast when
Yes,
he
he
was
did.
in the studio audience.
he
So
did.
I feel like he's been. Shut up! Don't say the name. But anyway, Tom Cooper said, "Is this a conspiracy against those of us who are fighting poverty?" I said, "Clearly not, Tom, because I'm on your side." So he came back and had a mulligan. But what happened with yours, Terry, was that
I'm waiting.
parts of it got recorded over. So we tried to get them. We tried to figure out if there was a way to kind
See,
of.
they replaced the audio technician.
Yes, now he's wearing a hat and he's drinking whiskey instead of beer, so we're hoping it'll be better this time.
We're in good hands.
So we tried to recover, we tried to recover the audio for a couple of months, and then we were like, you know what, we could run part of it, but that's not our thing here. We run the whole thing unedited.
magical moment.
Well, my fear was this, right, is that if we ran a little bit, we might miss some of the context, and I didn't want any of our guests to feel like they got edited. So we were going
not hurt.
we were
I'm
going to
not
send
bitter.
it to you. We were going to say, do you want us to run half of it? But then I thought, it's not fair to Terry, so let's have him back in and do a whole thing. So I love the Nixon book, thank you.
One of the greatest stories in my spec column writing career, because, and I will short circuit the story.
No, go long,
We,
it's the Lair.
we get to the end of an 8-hour day. I fly to Chicago to cover the trial because, of course, Conrad used to own the Hamilton Spectator, and his wife, Barbara Amiel,
Did you really fly there
is
to
a
cover?
North End Hamilton girl who went to Ballard and Delta.
I did not know she
people
was from
forget that.
Hamilton. I forgot that.
And I get up at the first intermission in the morning, and this was supposed to be a busy day in court. Turns out it was a quiet day because they canceled Donald Trump. Turn the corner, and I run into Conrad, and I say, Conrad, Terry Cooke from Hamilton, Ontario, because I'm a shy and understated guy. He said, did you know my wife Barbara's from Hamilton? I said, as a matter of fact, I did. We had a lovely conversation. He said, would you do me the honor of allowing me to sign your Nixon biography? Because I was carrying it.
So you were covering him, but you wanted him to sign your book.
To my very good friend Terry Cooke, with thanks for your
He
kind
was there with
words,
for the Spectator.
with every good wish to you, yours, Conrad Black in Chicago.
That's very nice.
We get to the end of the long day where they cover the removal of the boxes from 10 Toronto Street.
Kind of incriminating.
And Greenspan had a really good day. They kicked the tar out of the government. And as I'm leaving, a guy in the row behind me who's been sitting there all that day taps me on the shoulder and says, I bet you're Canadian, right? Not sure how he knew, but I said, yep. He said, I bet you think that based on what you heard today, Conrad's going to walk. And I said, I don't know. It's one day in a 3-month trial, but I think they had a pretty good day. He said, well, I'm a retired judge in this court. The government wins 95% of the cases. He should have pled out. He's going to jail.
Wow.
And that gave me the opener for a great spec column.
Wow.
Hamilton, Ontario, all the way to Chicago. It's a great world.
I love this story, and I appreciate the book, and that's very cool, and I will read it because I hate Nixon, so I'll read it. But let me just ask you this.
Duplessis, which was his first, by the way, which is also a great read.
Okay, but let me just ask you this. I had no idea that the Spectator took their weekend columnists and like flew them on junkets to cover trials.
If they're entrepreneurial and they pay their own freight,
Because I was going to say, Deirdre Pike right now is like, why am I not at the Vatican covering the Pope? I mean, come on.
When Gary Smith does theater reviews on Broadway, it's on his dime.
Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
So you paid for it, but they, supported it.
You get media credentials out of it, though.
You do.
Well, that's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm telling you.
I was being paid to write the column, and I thought, if the story is in Chicago, and being an urban junkie, I miss no opportunity to go to great cities.
Right.
So,
But one of our greatest Spectator Lair cast instigator audience members, Deirdre Pike, who writes now for the Spec, should be watching the Cardinals make that decision at the Vatican. I mean, this would be
without
up. I think so. Okay, thank you for this. And we did not pull a Nixon. It was legitimate. But like I said, our producer over there is now drinking whiskey instead of beer,
I'm with
so
you,
we should
Rob.
have no problem.
I don't believe there was any conspiracy.
Gibson's finest. Everything's gonna be all right.
Beautiful. We're under control.
Oski wee wee.
In the words of Alexander Haig, you're in control now in the Situation Room. I like to hear that. I'm feeling better.
Exactly. Uh-oh. Oh, no, here come the drones. Okay. Well, welcome to the Lair. And before we get into some of the meteor stuff, I hear that you have had some interminglings with Hollywood types lately.
Oh, I was.
Do tell.
So, not so much Hollywood types, but I was in Vancouver for National Community Foundation board meetings and had to fly back through Calgary. We've been doing some work on a great national program called Jump Math, which targets kids who have difficulty with numeracy.
Wow, which is neat.
And I end up having dinner with the founder and the inspiration, a guy named John Mighton, who is a playwright of some renown in Canada. But lo and behold, he says to me, well, did you know I was in a great Hollywood movie? And I said, no, didn't know that. He was in Good Will Hunting.
Wow.
He was the tutor.
Really?
And he had Matt Damon and Ben Affleck come to his apartment in Toronto and say, this is a great story, and we need to do this. Lo and behold, as we compare notes, he says to me, so you live in Hamilton? Yep. He said, did you know I grew up in Hamilton? I did know that. He said, where'd you go to elementary school? I said, well, I went to Earl Kitchener and then Ryerson. We compared notes. We were in the same enrichment class at Ryerson, 1 year apart, somewhere back in the early 60s. And of course, you think the world is too small by a large
crazy.
measure. And this guy was the tutor in Good Will Hunting, and he's created a math program which was recently featured in the New York Times and has really started to make a difference in terms of performance, particularly for kids from challenged neighborhoods and challenged backgrounds. So,
Well, you had me at Affleck, but I have to say, as somebody who sucks at
Robin
math.
Williams, too.
Well, no. The name makes me happy, but
Thank you.
I have to say that
Anything that
What?
makes you-
I
I'm
am
here
not gonna
to make you
say-
happy,
My
Laura.
husband My husband sent me a Facebook post of David Beckham's new underwear commercial and said, "Don't say I never do anything for you." We have
He
a very
sent that
good
to me
name.
too. So don't get
What
too
I
excited.
wanted to ask him was, Rob, why are you watching David Beckham's new underwear commercial? I just, yeah, for me, I appreciate it. My point being, you had me at Affleck, but I'm terrible at math. Like I'm really bad at it. So tell me about the program. I'm interested.
It's
In case my children have my same math
So,
problems.
given that I'm a liberal arts guy, I'd be the worst guy in the world to explain it, except that it starts with the assumption that people who have not been grounded in the fundamentals of math don't easily recognize the symbols or the sequences involved, and you have to go back to the basics and frankly drill and inspire and create a sense of the story of math so that
Wow.
you're captivated by it in the same way that I've always been captivated by
'cause
history.
any narrative, like I'm not a
Once
history
was a
buff.
man
I'm
named Euclid.
I'm an English buff, right? I can learn anything. If there's a story, I hear a song, I want to understand the lyrics and the story of the lyrics. If math had been presented to me as a story, I might have got it instead of a randomness of headaches. That's how I look at math. So that's very cool. So you're traveling across the country. Hamilton Foundation is part of a national project like that one, and I'm sure others, right?
Correct.
You were down, weren't you visiting Detroit recently, or
No,
I thought I
I've
saw
been
something
in-
on Facebook.
I haven't been in Detroit in a number of years.
But what was the city you visited in the last year or two? You went on a Facebook, Buffalo, I think it was, right? You
Well,
went over to
I
Buffalo?
was part of a Buffalo road trip that Urbanicity did.
Right,
And,
that's it.
and we hooked up with my buddy Bruce Fisher, who's a writer and prof at State University of New York, who's the former city manager there. And we did a day-long tour with, I don't know, Graham
Graham was
Crawford
there,
was
right?
there, 55
Yeah, I think I saw it on Graham's Facebook.
citizens of Hamilton who wanted to learn the lessons of Buffalo and see how they reconciled with our experience and our progress in Hamilton.
So let's talk about that, because progress in Hamilton is certainly something that I am passionate about. As you know, we've always been that way. We have in the Lair here a number, we've got Mark Chamberlain, Fred Eisenberger, Matt Green is sitting here with us, a number of people who put a lot of time and energy above and beyond their daytime work to progress Hamilton. So what did you learn from that Buffalo junket?
Don't look for home runs, don't look for quick fixes.
Don't look for Panacea like a casino in the core kind of thing?
The little stuff matters.
Send
The strengths of neighborhoods and small business will always and only be nurtured with a fundamental approach to livability. And in the case of Buffalo, frankly, even the places where they took large bets, and in their cases, they did it with an LRT system back in the 70s, they misunderstood the dynamics of good urban planning and built form and densification and interpreted and delivered a project that ultimately damaged the core. So it's not only important to do the right things, it's important to pay attention to the detail when it comes to the fabric of neighborhoods.
Can you translate that back and let me make the assumptions on Buffalo? They did a beautiful job revitalizing their downtown core and their architectural buildings, but only from 9 to 5? Is that where you're... Nobody lives there?
I mean,
there's
it's bigger
nothing-
than that. They decided that the easy way to marry active downtown retail with white suburban flight was to build a network of spaghetti-like interchanges right into the heart of downtown, which had the net impact of in fact, expediting the exodus. They built all of their major anchor investments, so particularly the State University, the second campus out in Amherst, as opposed to rebuilding in the part of Buffalo where it already existed. They built their professional sports facilities in the middle of nowhere and had the net effect of, again...
Speaking of sports, can I just interject?
The
Hold on.
stadium's right downtown.
Hold
The
on one
baseball
second.
stadium is.
What's up?
That was a much later iteration over
They're a AAA town. Don't make fun of the
So hold on
Bisons.
for 1 second, though. I just have to say, for those of us listening, because this is an audio cast, they hear a gym above. This is the same very gym where Justin Trudeau boxed on Saturday. It's true. He walked those stairs right by my office. He boxed upstairs
Okay,
for
now
the
I'm
Trudeau.
too bothered to be able to continue.
weepy.
He's got his hair cut. I don't know.
Yeah. Aaron's trying to look like Justin. He's going for the after boxing. I'm just explaining to our listeners that the sound in the background is the same sound that Justin Trudeau was a part of 2 days ago. Okay, go ahead. Proceed.
I've never seen Aaron box either.
Was that a 30-second bout?
Hey, now.
It sounded really short.
Why did it sound short? The thrill on
They
the
portrayed it in the paper.
the
They
thrill
said-
on the Hill was short because he beat down that conservative senator.
He's the conservative. What are you looking at me for?
But he's only a conservative in yeah, I agree with you, Fred. He's not a conservative. Everything about Terry is progressive in nature. Sorry, I digress. So we're talking about Buffalo, and it's fascinating, and that's why I got distracted, because I'm so interested in Buffalo. So continue. What? I have to make this listenable.
We're just trying to get a trade here. We're trying to broker a trade between the blue team and the red team. We're going to give the blue team Larry.
Okay.
If we could take,
Mr. Green, I think you need to understand
You know
that.
what? The blue team can have Larry Deaney. I love him, but
I'm
they
not
can have
sure. I'm not sure
Red
that
team
Mr.
wants
Cooke
to.
is a liberal. I think he's swung all the way around, and there's far more in common between NDPers and conservatives. At least they believe in something. That they're closer on the spectrum than mushy middle nobodies that are liberals.
We're
So
mushy
whether
middle nobodies.
liberals,
Wait, went out. Like whom? Give me a name.
Larry Deaney is a known liberal. What do you want from me?
Larry's too easy.
I don't know anybody's politics, but I know that Terry used to be blue and now he's orange, and that makes a whole lot more
Wow.
sense.
Okay, Terry. Terry's nonpartisan in his current role. How do you feel about being characterized as that which you reviled years
Got to
ago?
get the conversation moving.
From Buffalo? You're kidding. Buffalo was so fascinating.
Well, first of all, I am a nonpartisan, haven't been a member of a political party in the better part of 20 years, but I come very much from the tradition of red conservatives. And Robert Stanfield, Joe Clark, David Crombie in particular has had an
fiscal
influence.
conservative,
They're
social
people who
liberal.
understand that you need to balance budget, as I did when I ran a regional government.
Isn't that most of
But
Canada, though?
I also come from a background that one of my undergraduate degrees was in social work, and I spent the better part of my first decade working, developing social housing for people with disabilities. I'm proud
the
of
Hamilton-
all of that work, and I
Your
think it's,
current, so your current job at Hamilton Community Foundation makes total sense for you.
well, it marries both ends of it, right? It's having stewardship of a great pool of assets that were acquired and assembled in this community by people who are great industrialists and business people, and in fact, applying it in a way that is thoughtful, that's compassionate, and that understands that we're changing the trajectory of this community,
Okay,
even
so-
as there's a Pier 6 brawl breaking out upstairs.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
that's Justin Trudeau for a rematch. So here's the thing. Let's get to the elephant in the room, because there is one. And there will be until at least April when the OLG goes out for RFPs.
Skip over
But the
30
Buffalo
years of
thing, 'cause
conservative
all he
history,
was, all he was
Buffalo,
doing with
Rich
the,
Stadium,
all he was
the
doing with the Buffalo
Bisons.
thing was leading you up to a, I bet you were just working him towards a casino position. Am I wrong?
Absolutely not.
I don't believe you. Look at the smile on his face. He's trying to lay the ground that somehow
I don't want to
rationally
go
you
to
have a
war
different
on
position.
casino with Terry when we've got.
What, Fred and Crawford
I
and,
wanna go with-
and
I wanna
Matt
go to
Green
Fred
and,
on it.
and Mark Chamberlain in the room?
No, Matt Green and Crawford aren't sitting in the chair, are they?
Well, Matt's sitting in the red chair. He can interject anytime I swing the
God
mic.
bless all of you. Bring it on.
Can somebody help me with water, soft drink, whatever
Yeah,
you got?
he's
Thanks.
upping it.
I'm just getting warmed up.
We have a lot here in the Lair. Okay, but let's,
Terry, what do you think this is, a casino?
wait a sec. We need somebody in a red slutty dress to bring him his drink. Hold on.
And that's great of you, Graham, to actually go to one yesterday and see one for the first time. I hope you weren't too frightened.
No, the waitresses here are just simply not hot enough to be a full representation of a Hamilton casino. They need to be wearing short red dresses and have some sizzle to them.
Yeah, I'd hate it if
You know what? Terry's son does not want to get involved in this melee.
Hi, Wilson.
Hi,
Thanks,
Wilson.
buddy.
We're sorry for what Lauren's about to do to your daddy.
Not at all.
But so I appreciate the work you do with the Hamilton Community Foundation. I think you're a great guy to be stewarding it because, as you said, you understand good resource asset management. You understand the need. I mean, I love it. I want to step away from it for a second to get to the elephant in the room because no matter when we air this Laircast, and we will be airing this one, right? Our producer? It's taping? Okay. Gibson's Finest tells us it is. You know, even if we air it in a couple of weeks, beyond Council's big casino meeting on the 14th, beyond Marula's plans to try to get a Flamborough motion passed, the reality is it's going to be at least April before the OLG takes any kind of RFQs, and then the whole game changes again. So this issue is not going to end by the time we air this or the other Laircast tonight. You have, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, in recent weeks, in recent weeks,
For you to say.
you know what? Give me another drink and everything will start with a W. In recent weeks, okay, all of you say it. Show me one of, oh, well, you just got here, Aaron. You're late arriving. That's not fair. That's not fair. I know. Sorry, in recent weeks, Terry, you have, it seems to me, come out more vociferously about this. You've come out more passionately. I've seen some tweets where you're engaging Mark Chamberlain, that guy who joined Twitter and never stops. In fact, Mark Chamberlain and Terry White have had the longest Twitter battle I have ever seen. I think we're on day 17 of this thing. Every time I tune in, and I have young kids, so I'm up at 3 a.m, Terry and Mark are in the...
A week ago, he doesn't know he's lost yet.
Well, as Sam Marula said, no, my favorite tweet of the week last week, sorry, I digress, but it's a Laircast, I'm entitled. Last week, my favorite tweet of the week was, there was somebody on Twitter saying that Terry Whitehead should get in, in a kind of a pugilist match-off with somebody else. And Sam said why. He punches himself out every day on Twitter. It was hilarious. Terry's learning the medium. But it seems to me that you, Terry Cooke, recently have become much more
Friend
outspoken.
of yours, I don't mean to catch up.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll take Terry if you want Sam.
Yeah, Mac-
That's fine by me.
Take Sam any
No, but
Oh
we're
my
both
God.
dealing with the last kid picked.
Can you guys stop
right at-
treating people like cards at a casino? You can't deal these guys. They're individuals with their own opinions. Stop with this shameless
I've
gambling.
only been to one casino at Flamborough Downs with Graham yesterday, so I don't know about these card
Okay,
things.
we'll get to that in a second. But Terry, my point is this, is that for somebody who runs an important foundation, who has stayed above the fray, it seems to me in the last week or two, you've become more vocal, more engaged about your opposition to the casino. Am I reading that wrong? Sorry, am I weeding that wrong?
No,
I can make fun of myself. You know, if a certain Ottawa firm knew how to make fun of themselves, they would have done much better on Twitter, but I digress. Go ahead.
our position hasn't changed. As an institution, we are loath to wade into divisive and partisan issues. On big issues that we think will have a historic impact, I think we're called, and
Yeah.
leaders across the community are called to state and defend a position after they've looked at the evidence. In our case, as you and people in this room will well know, we've had a long and significant commitment and contribution to concentrated poverty in Hamilton. We, in fact, were asked by the medical officer of health, together with the CEOs of the major health institutions, so particularly St. Joe's, HHSC, and the family health team and the Academy of Medicine, to come together, to deliberate, to provide some input. And we did that. We took it very seriously. And
Terry, which one of our hospitals studies the impacts of gambling, though?
well, I would say, in particular, the one that's building the $500 million mental health facility on the West Mountain, so
Really?
St.
They-
Joseph's.
I understand that they have a treatment center for that, but do they understand the effects of?
I think they do.
No, they just have a $500 million treatment facility for mental illness, but they have no
They don't
clue.
provide counseling for it. They don't. They don't. Let's just be fair in what we're talking about. But the best part is, please reference that the Juravinsky is against gambling. I just love hearing that.
Because of their
That's
association with the
hilarious.
racetracks.
Come
Yeah.
First of all, you're attributing something to somebody that can speak on their own behalf and people who have a long track record of service. What I will tell you is I'm not a purist on this issue. I accept that gambling exists and will continue to exist and has grown all around us. When I was the regional chairman, I dealt with the royalty agreement on slot machines at Flamborough Downs. I accept that it is there. It's going to continue to be there. My guess is it will be there in a bigger way in Niagara Falls. It will be there in Toronto, likely. It's already there in Brantford, and it's there in Flamborough. When you ask me the question, which is, do I believe that on balance, a casino in the urbanized heart of this community, which in my view is starting to gain momentum and put in place fundamentals for a more prosperous future, if I think the casino will have a net economic and social benefit, I would say to you that based on all of the review that I can do of the experience in places that in any way resemble us, I think it would be damaging. I think it would not align in any way with all of the things that we're trying to do productively to build a more prosperous and a more livable future. And I think it's a bad choice. And that's not to say that it is the end of the world or the only issue that matters. I do happen to think, as a leader in this community, I have an obligation together with my peers to step up when it really matters and express an opinion. I also respect that at the end of the day, this is the call of democratically elected people. I've been there, I've done that, I understand that it's never easy. I happen to think on this one, the overwhelming balance of experience would suggest that casinos are both an economic failure and a social and medical risk. That's my judgment. And that's the judgment that we've expressed as an institution, and we've done it with a rare degree of unanimity across the board.
So,
I
Terry,
have to say, I've never seen an example in this community's history where so many of the people from disparate parts of the community are aligned in their thinking about what matters to the future. So I'm proud of the position we've taken. It's certainly not a strident position, but it's one that I think is based thoughtfully on the evidence.
So you're, as always, I love how you articulate things. I've always been a fan of that. I'm tweeting out what you just said, and so is Matt Green, I'm sure, and Graham. You said a casino is an economic failure and was it a great social risk? I want to quote you accurately.
It's a social and a health risk.
And a social and health risk. Okay,
You
I'm
know,
just reading this.
I wouldn't be the guy that coined the line, but I think when people say it is a tax on ignorance, it's a tax on vulnerability, it's a tax on people who have challenges, and it's a way in which governments take from the pocketbooks of people who don't understand the odds that they're playing against,
Right.
as opposed to fairly saying, here's the infrastructure of services that we require and demand in our community, and guess what? The price of a civilized society is the tax that we pay. And everybody is so afraid of taxation nowadays that in fact our infrastructure is crumbling, and we're looking for the easy way out. Globe and Mail today,
Oh, he's pulling out the briefcase, Lauren, get ready.
for those who read it, had the...
Terry's a learned individual. He's got books and stuff.
You know what? Somehow I probably left it in the car. Alberta Economic Summit today. The CEO of Alta Finance Corporation in Calgary, together with a group of peers in Alberta, not known for its pro-tax position, said, you know what? Luxury taxes, sin taxes, are a mistake. They create an addiction for governments who aren't prepared to have the kind of adult conversations about what it costs to provide basic infrastructure. I am a fiscal conservative. I think you do have to be careful about easily reaching into people's pockets. But in a community in which we have an accumulating $150 million annual infrastructure deficit, if we think we can find our way out of this, either by sin taxes or straight cuts to services, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Terry,
I think it's a mistake. I think
tie
it's
back.
bad public policy.
if I may, casino, back to the original discussion of math. If you break out Dr. Richardson's numbers, and before anybody starts poo-pooing, we all have focused on that 1% that equates to 36% of the revenue.
1 to 3.
But 36% of the
Just-
revenue means that they have a vested
Then
interest.
don't let me speak and
All right.
argue the numbers. I really want to
I'll
try and
argue
make
with you in
this
a
point.
moment. Go ahead.
If you take the basic math of the amount of visitors, not unique visitors, but visitors, who go to Flamborough and the gross revenue that they get, that the targeted 36% of revenue are leaving behind $3,500 to $4,000 per visit. I find it very difficult to believe that someone of a code red neighborhood is leaving behind $4,000 a visit in a casino.
We're using Bontus's curve.
No, I'm not using
It's the
Bontus.
same curve that Bontus used when he was talking about the average income. Remember the curve? Remember the curve that he presented at council, Maurice?
It's actually just really simple math, and the 4,000 would be the average. So there would be, of that 1% that equates, the average person who walks into any casino in the province's door leaves behind $118 to $122, depending on what casino you're looking at. Nobody is going to suggest that that's not the case. That's what some people pay for their entertainment. Occasionally, people do win. But if you take out 36% of the revenue and attribute it to the degenerate problem gambler, then that 36% of revenue, Matthew, on whatever scale you want, averages out at $4,000 a visit. I don't understand how anybody who is on welfare, a code red problem person, or are we trying to defend degenerate gamblers with money? Because let's just be clear, that's what the math tells us.
God, where do I
so-
start? Go ahead,
Let
Terry.
let me start
It's just math.
Yeah.
with simply,
What was that math you talked about earlier?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to your Laircast. Please, I can't wait, Mark.
Heckle.
let me,
Yes. No, heckle. I'm just saying, I look forward to your full-on heckle. I want our listeners to know that you're going to get the microphone fully in a moment, because right now they're in pain. All right, go ahead, Terry.
I'm going to answer your question, but you've just reminded me that my all-time favorite all-candidate setting when I was regional chairman was Saturday night at a place called the Galley Pump on Beach Road.
Kelly Pump was on Cannon, wasn't it?
It was right, yeah, Cannon, just at the corner there at, I think it was on Beach Road. That's my recollection. Bill Sears and I sitting, trying to have a civil, coherent debate about
No, it was
the benefits
Dines.
of
Terry,
one-tier
it was the
government.
Dines that was on Beach Road.
Let's not argue about the
Wasn't it
location
that?
of the
I'm pretty sure
pub.
it was
He's
the
making a
Galley Pump,
point
wasn't
On
here.
Cannon. Anyways, sorry.
Anyway, it reminded me of the environment that we're in. So let me start with the language. I think the notion of degenerates is wrong, but the Center for Addiction and Mental Health says very clearly, based on their evaluation of the evidence, that there are significant groups in our society that are more prone and vulnerable to problem gambling.
Yes.
And they are
Let's review them.
senior citizens, Aboriginals, people living in poverty,
Terry, please quote them.
people with
in-
mental illness.
Please quote them in Dr. Richardson's most vulnerable order down. You
Well,
haven't hit it yet.
I don't have it entirely committed to memory. I know,
Who is the most at-risk segment of Hamilton society for problem gaming?
go ahead. Yeah, if you want to answer your own question.
the report.
Yeah,
Good enough.
go ahead.
Mike's working.
Grade 7 to grade 12 boys.
There you go.
What does that have to do with casinos?
Building the best place to raise a kid has nothing to do with an OLG strategy to,
What,
in
you mean
fact, bump the
vision
average
in the
age of...
city?
But you're
That
being
we're clearly in
disingenuous unless
violation
you're
of?
talking about eliminating online gaming too. If that's who's at risk, let's protect them.
Absolutely.
We,
Yes.
Of course.
And the casino, just get them both in.
No, don't be half-assing your cause, that's all. If Dr. Richardson, who's your spokesperson, has identified...
No,
that-
she's the medical
but-
officer of
no,
health,
No, but the
Lauren.
no side has gravitated there first and foremost. She listed...
Forbid those doctors.
She listed virtually everybody except a woman who's 30 years old as it's like if you've had financial crisis, if you're Asian, if you're First Nations, if you've recently had financial trouble, if you've recently had emotional stress, everybody, but she did put aside grade 7 to grade 12 boys as the number one. She did.
So let me get your, oh, sorry, Terry, you go ahead, please. You're the guest, because I argue with him weekly. Go ahead.
Well, let's turn it around and put a positive obligation on those who think that this is the great panacea to all that they see that's wrong with this community. Because I've spent some time, I've read the statements from the proponent so far.
I quote, Hamilton has been frozen. Hamilton was built on steel. It will be rebuilt on rock and roll. If that's not a suggestion, as cheesy, and I love PJ, but that's super cheese bag.
I don't want to defend cheese.
Please don't, because it's indefensible.
Actually has acid wash jeans, he's got the denim jacket, he's ready to go to the Canadian tuxedo, but it's not quite the tails that we were promised, I'll just put that on.
Matthew, that picture was from 1987.
I love you for it.
I know, but let's try not to make it personal, as in spite of how
We don't do
tempting it
that.
is. We try to raise the dialogue slightly, only slightly.
Here's my question. When I've looked at communities that in any way resemble ours, so Rust Belt communities in transition, mid to small size cities, not international tourist meccas.
Right.
And even frankly, if you lumped in a place like Montreal, the evidence is that the gross spend in casinos, by and large, is by the local population.
Right,
It's
that's why they-
maybe
that's
10
why-
or 15% of people
OLG
coming
wants it
elsewhere.
in dense,
Okay.
in dense cores.
Okay, so-
They need the foot
so
traffic from the
is-
locals.
Is anybody going to, first of all, seriously argue with me that people are going to drive past Niagara, fly past Pearson and bypass the billion-dollar Toronto casino, come to Hamilton to do the big spend and be the economic generator that you've talked about? Secondly, if most of the spending is coming from a local population, everybody that's ever looked at major attractions acknowledges something called the substitution effect, which is if you're spending it at the casino, if you're spending $3,500 there, are you really then going to have the capacity to go out and
Otherwise
support
known as a blast
local
zone for
Yeah,
local
well,
businesses,
Just
right?
let me finish, and then I'm happy to hear you.
Yes.
And so you're going to continue to have the positive supportive effect for Theatre Aquarius and the Festival of Friends and the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Bulldogs and all those other things. Okay, you're following me. And then if you can just point me to one city of similar size where the net impact on adjacent neighborhoods and real retail activity over the long term, so let's say 10 years plus, has created a net positive growth in assessment, commercial industrial assessment, improvement in the livability of the neighborhoods, and healthiness of the adjacent retail activity. Just show me where that community is. I'm happy to go there and look at it. But I've looked, and I've traveled a lot, and I read everything I get my hands on. I've yet to find an example that suggests to me that this is a bet worth taking.
Okay. Let's
I'm
go with your,
finished. Take your time.
thank you. Let's go with the notion that casinos and the revenue therein are all about lazy government. That's fine. Let's put that aside and talk about some of the things that you've talked about. No, because the government gets used to suckling at the casino teat and then gets lazy and needs to. That's fine.
We agree on that.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So-
it's a dangerous addiction.
Government has all kinds of addictions,
Yep.
as does society. They are merely a reflection of each other. The notion that it's some sort of a panacea, I'm not here to defend that in any way, shape, or form. If in fact there's casinos all over the place, we shouldn't be in a position where we are out of the equation due to it. So, for example, if in fact we know that Hamiltonians are leaving this community and creating problems in other communities by losing their money and destroying their lives, those other communities, whether it's blood money or not, are getting the jobs, the tax, realty tax benefit, the kickback from casinos. So if in fact it's
And
just about,
It's done such a remarkable job of dropping the unemployment rate in Brantford and Niagara Falls and strengthening the retail
then
activity
you're,
and
you're
knitting.
kind of being like Laura. You ask 3 questions of me, you let me begin to answer, and then you need to take, and that's fine.
Terry will rest in peace now that you've complimented him so
No,
highly.
that's fine.
I just have to say, that's a lovely thing to say to our guest.
If I'm addressing a point, please don't change the point that you were.
It's called circular
putting out-
logic. It's a good argument technique. Yeah, exactly. He laid out his case. So lay out your case, Lauren.
Well, I'd like you to fast forward and spend the time on the communities, because we now have a
Your
multi-
second point was about
multitude of-
substitutional net gain.
Right.
Okay, so we as a downtown celebrated something fierce. Tourism Hamilton got serious wood that Anchor Bar, all the way from the States, came here. Well, that's taking my chicken wing money.
North in Buffalo. Let's be precise.
Absolutely.
We're back to Buffalo. It's beautiful.
Took away my Ray's Place chicken wing budget and brought, come on, that's what business is, Terry. That's how it goes. Small scale, okay, so how many Anchor Bars equate to, that's really not the way it
So
goes.
there's a couple of fundamental differences here. One is that we were not asked as a community to weigh in on the Anchor Bar coming downtown. We were, as a community, asked to weigh in on a pretty important level about a casino, because a casino is not simply an Anchor Bar. If I go to the Anchor Bar, even though it's owned, it's large corporate, it takes away from the Rays budget, which you and I, hold on, let me finish, sir, that you and I support regularly. We've bought a lot of wings at Rays.
We spent a lot of election nights.
We
there, come to
have.
think
We've
of it.
had good times. Rays is a good place. So yes,
Back in the days
it
when I
might.
was allowed to do elections.
Yeah, I know. You got to come back. We miss you, bud. So we've spent a lot of money at Rays, right? And the Anchor Bar might take some of that wing money, but the difference is we'll still get fed. A casino fundamentally feeds me nothing. I walk away with nothing in my belly. And when John Best tried to make the argument to me that grocery stores are equally predatory because they strategically market to me, I understand the positioning of products on shelves, but I still walk away with groceries in my bag. A casino leaves me with nothing but a cheap rush. But it's not.
That's
if it,
you. Some
sadly,
people
if it were
enjoy gambling.
tell me somebody who walks away from the casino with more than they walked in with, other than a brief hope and rush.
For the vast majority of participants, according to OLG studies, according to Medical Officer of Health studies, 99% of people are casual and responsible
And
gambling.
do we walk out with more money in our pocket and food in our belly than we walked in with?
Occasionally, but
Right.
I don't go
Extremely
pay for a
rarely.
movie
So here's
and
the,
come out
but
with
here's
more
the
money in my
fundamental
pocket.
difference is I have been asked
just fun.
I have been asked as a citizen to say, do I want this large development?
You're
Yes,
not
I
on council.
No, I have been asked. I have been asked because council has said to me, we want possibly a referendum, but more importantly, we're surveying the neighborhood. My Chamber of Commerce just surveyed me. My BIAs are surveying me. I am being asked as a citizen to weigh in. The OLG has said it wants to hear from communities, and as a direct representative democracy, they've said this is such a big issue, we're not just going to go by our elections, we're going to make it a direct question. So I am being, I don't care about a referendum. What I'm saying is we are being asked by multiple groups in multiple ways to weigh in and give our council our opinion on this. Qualitative surveys, quantitative, anecdotal, whatever. We've been asked to do this. So this is not a situation where I'm wondering whether or not there should be a new chicken wing restaurant that happens to be a franchise that might take away my Rays budget. I'm being asked about a fundamental question about my vision for our city, our downtown core, and what is best for the people in this
Laura,
city.
I was not
And I don't
dictating the
think-
conversation. I was addressing a point
Who-
that Terry had made.
I don't care. I'm telling you something now. I don't care what the
Well,
framework
like,
was.
That's. I don't think you weren't on your school debate
You
team,
brought
right?
up no.
Point,
I
counterpoint.
Yeah, you know what?
point, no.
I've done quite well in this business. So here's the thing.
I understand, but
yeah,
this still
I know.
isn't-
Weekly, you understand. So here's the thing, Lauren,
Wow.
is that you brought up this Rays analogy and this chicken wing example, and what I'm saying to you is that's a false argument. The casino is not about whether or not some new restaurant's going to take my chicken wing budget. It's about the impact on people in my community. It's about the future vision of my downtown. It's about my values as a society, and it's about the fact that I think that the numbers that are being presented are based on the need for us to spend our disposable income in a way that, yes, maybe some of us will have fun, but a lot of people are going to walk out harmed. How is that possibly a good scenario for a city? How is that possibly the next step for a downtown with momentum? The casino is not what we need. It's not the best we can do. And it's not a chicken wing restaurant that's going to at least leave our stomachs full and our mouths satisfied. It's going to cause people a lot of harm. So it's a false analogy to try to bring in chicken wing franchises as being somehow commensurate to a casino question.
Thank you for the infomercial.
You're welcome.
In future, I won't address a direct point that was made.
Well, you were
I will
trying
s-
to for 5
No,
minutes.
I'll
but
sit
we
here and
could-
get
we couldn't
lectured.
even
That's
remember-
fine.
Lauren, my friend, I like that you always try to attack the process when you're losing. Talk. But you brought up
Terry's
chicken
point-
wings as some sort of analogy to the casino, and it's a false analogy.
When another theater company opens, does the theater company beside it sell less tickets? Maybe. That's called business.
But what do 140 local artists and promoters not want this casino? Because they don't understand business?
Be careful. By the time this airs, that could be a really silly
Okay, so you're saying that
analogy.
you've somehow worked 140 of them down from their position. What are you suggesting?
A lot of money going around, Lauren?
What's that?
Is there a lot of money going around?
Oh, yeah. You got it, Matt. Everybody who's in favor is on the take. And don't worry, buddy. We'll have a job for you, too.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying that chicken wings and a casino are not commensurate. They have nothing to do with each other. Okay, so finish your next point, whatever it was going to be.
I got nothing else. I'm here to listen.
On urban geography, first of all, because I love urban geography, I mean, the experience is, in mature markets, in fact, competition is a good thing. When you go to New York City, you go to the Diamond District, you go to the places that have particular niche markets, 1 on a block is good, 2 can be better, and in some cases, 3 is a bonanza. We're not at that point. Well, they're not anymore. Dunder and Aberdeen had 4 when I was a kid, they have 0 today. The market has changed. But Niagara Falls, New York, or Buffalo are interesting experiences, because I used to, when I would go to a Sabres, or lo and behold, in the old days when Ernie D was playing in Buffalo in the greatest sport of all, basketball, we would stop at Niagara Falls, New York, at Cuomo's or at Pete's Market, and
NBA basketball?
no, NBA basketball.
They had an NBA team?
Lauren,
How old are
you
you,
gotta
Terry?
get with the program, pal. Honestly. Bob McAdoo, Jimmy McMillan, they took the Celtics to 7 games in, I don't know, I'm gonna
I thought
say
you were like
78.
47. What's going on here?
Well, you know what, I've had serious responsibilities in my life, and obviously it's aged me in a different way than you.
So since Lauren, oh man, it's slightly different habits on your off time. But let me say this. Chair. Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
When the $500 million casino arrived in Niagara Falls, New York, the boosters, and this was not most of the local business community or the neighborhood, said this is in fact going to be a net benefit. And lo and behold, the casino, I know the one in Buffalo in 2011 gave away something like $70 million in gratuities in a single fiscal year. They are self-contained operations. The streetscape in Niagara Falls, New York, that at one time was relatively bustling in my adult lifetime, is now decimated.
Because of the casino?
It has certainly been.
Terry.
You know what? Graham Crawford posted a fabulous mini documentary on a long-time restaurant family in Niagara Falls
props,
that have now moved to Lewiston, and they will directly attribute it to the trajectory changing when the casino opened.
My memories of Brantford downtown 15 years ago are illusions.
And-
It was awesome until the casino.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because my experience with smaller communities that are struggling with their self-esteem, their image, and the sense of despair is they will often take a chance on a casino because there is nowhere else to turn. I think Brantford fairly would be in that camp. What I haven't seen, and what you haven't answered, is my other question, which is, of all the casinos in mid-sized, particularly industrial cities that have opened in the last 30 years in urban North America, can you point me to one that over the course of that time period has seen a net improvement in the quality of life, the health of the commercial assessment base, and the relative stability of the employment base that we all depend upon to have a prosperous community? Because I haven't found one.
Rivers.
Sorry?
Rivers Casino.
Where's that?
And our neighbor, what do you mean, where is that? You don't know where the Rivers Casino is?
I don't get it. Where is it?
Oh, no, that's our Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you know, that's similar comparison between those two cities.
So one of our guests is answering the question, but Lauren, go ahead.
It's done nothing.
Calgary is not a comparable city to Hamilton. They have 3 casinos.
Closest comparison. Yeah.
Contrary to the Spectator's clarification tweet, that said one is not in the downtown, one is in the downtown, one's on the edge of the downtown, the other's in Huppitzville. I don't see those casinos being closed by cities that are superior to us in terms of quality of living. And if that's because people then become dependent on them, I can accept that from a government perspective. But what we've learned from the mayor of Brantford is what the benefit you can gain from that revenue elsewhere in your city. I am not a shareholder of Hard Rock International. I am a guy who likes to gamble. I don't care. I don't care if it's going to be downtown. I have no interest in slots. But when I go to the reservation to buy my clone de Mauriers, you're not getting any of the benefit, and I'm still getting the same lung cancer. And the perspective of, at least when I'm buying them at the variety store, I'm still smoking just as much. So I'm only going to buy my booze at duty free. You won't get any of the benefit, and I will still have all the destruction. And that's how I'm viewing the way the city is viewing this situation.
First of all, on the urban, or on the Aboriginal tobacco issue, let me just recommend one good read for you. My buddy Jim Poling at the SPEC, his dad, Jim Poling Sr., is a former CEO of Canada Press, has just written a great history of Aboriginal tobacco in Canada that I would highly recommend to you. I don't draw the same conclusions you do about if the net proceeds are going to go elsewhere and the damage is going to occur here, for two reasons. One is all of the evidence, and particularly the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, suggests that proximity matters. So relative to vulnerable populations,
Problem gambling, though. Only to
that's not my assessment of the evidence at all. And secondly, you still haven't pointed me to a city that is at the same point in the trajectory as we are, which is we were on the mat 20 years ago, and we are grinding our way back and gaining some significant momentum, which is entirely unrelated to, and in my view, incompatible with what gaming and casinos do to urban centers. I'm not going to eradicate it at Flamborough if that's where the OLG chooses to go. I'm not going to eliminate it in Brantford or Niagara or Toronto. I don't think it's something that is complementary to everything else that we're doing here that is starting to show some net benefit. You want me to take a risk? Based on the evidence, I think it's a risk not worth taking. We disagree about that, Lauren.
So if I may, because we have a few other guests and we'll talk more casino, if I can just say one last thing respectfully on your argument, the argument that the evil exists and the benefits of said evil are being felt elsewhere because we're not having said evil in our town to maximize on those benefits. Money's driving to Brantford, money's driving to Niagara Falls. I would suggest that I would rather not have more of the negative in our town. You know, you say, well, we're losing the money. This is just my take on it. You're saying we're losing the money to Brantford currently, and money's driving to casinos in Niagara Falls. And, you know, why don't we at least capture the benefit of this negative in our own community? And what I'm saying, and I can't speak for all the other people opposed to it, is that Hamilton has got good things going on, things that a decade ago we could only have dreamed of. Seriously, this street was decimated of all the restaurants when it got through construction a year ago, and there are like 5 new restaurants on this block. There are things happening downtown that I would have never believed possible, and I think that saying, well, you know what, let's try to trap some of those negatives here so we can at least have some benefits, to me is not an argument I want to be making. I want to be making an argument about what can we get as a community, what do we deserve, what momentum do we really have going, and to me, a casino is counterintuitive to our potential. You know, we can argue whether gambling is good or gambling is bad, or whether other cities have benefited or other cities have failed. I look at downtown Hamilton and say, we have finally got shit going on, and I don't want to take an unnecessary risk. And I said this on Matt and Gunner the other morning, and I apologize if it's an offensive analogy, but it's like a person who realizes that they're suddenly very attractive to other people, a teenager, whatever. And, you know, they've never been attractive for years, so they take the first person who calls them for a date because they're so desperate to get some sort of action. And the best thing, and that's what I feel like we're doing with the casino. Hamilton suddenly got attractive, and we're saying, oh, this is the first person who wants to drop 200 million in our core. Let's take it, even though it's ugly. And I'm saying, can we not cannot wait for the better fit, the better date, the better investment downtown. I believe it's coming. And a counselor said to me the other day, but Laura, if we don't say yes to this, my fear is that we risk losing everything. And I said, that's because you're making your decision based on fear. We have a great momentum. We have a great core. Let's not be fear-based. That's my point. Go ahead.
And in our house, Wilson Cooke, we don't use the SH word. So every once in a while in a debate, people say stuff. That's okay.
I told you last time, minors and the Lair is kind of, difficult for us.
But I also want to put this in a municipal context, because again, I've been there, I've struggled. I governed as regional chairman through the early 90s
Yes.
when we had both the downloading and a dramatic increase in welfare rates and as our assessment base was shrinking. And we had the very painful process of discarding a bunch of things that were hard choices and cutting services and raising taxes. None of that is fun in elected office, and I get that. But relatively speaking, when we're talking about $1 billion plus operating budget, when you're talking about a very significant and growing assessment base with over $1 billion of new permits on an annual basis for a number of years, $5 to $10 million in royalty to the municipality, frankly, I understand it's serious money, but it's a rounding error. And it isn't going to solve the other challenges. We, in my opinion, and I've said this on the record, will inevitably have to have some increase in property taxes just to pay for the backlog and the increasing deferred maintenance cost to keep our bridges from falling down and our roads in decent repair and our transit system going. Those are hard choices. This is not going to solve that conundrum for municipal
I don't think you're
leaders.
suggesting the panacea is.
And I'm not suggesting, Lauren, that you are.
It's a panacea.
But I think we have to put that piece of it in some broader
But if you
context.
want to- Terry, if you want to put a $5 to $10 million price tag based on the projections and otherwise, you also do need to include what the overall economy benefit is to the jobs and the rest of it. If we as a community say that Supercrawl is worth $6 million for one day, then 1,200, there's that too. It's not just,
Can I add on this question?
yes.
This is my question. Have you ever, both of you gentlemen, because you've been lived here longer than I am, you're more involved than I am, have you ever seen a debate galvanize the community like this one has?
You're talking to the champion of amalgamation about
Amalgamation, Red
how
Hill,
how
Manor,
issues
right.
galvanize opinion in the
But this
community.
is why I'm asking you.
No, this is a hard issue.
Right.
This too will pass. Let me talk about what I think the great part of this debate has been, which has been that notwithstanding some interesting and I think not particularly well-formed comments about the social media, this has brought into play voices that never would have been part of the conversation during the amalgamation debate, during the Red Hill debate, during a whole bunch of others where I have some scars from the experience. I think in a way that's entirely constructive and positive and that will signal, in fact, a turning point in the confidence of the community about making decisions about our own future. And I accept that people will disagree. That's a democracy and it's fair game. I think it's a civil and increasingly sophisticated political conversation that we're having in this community, and I think that's healthy.
Will you agree to the notion that those who believe that a casino is a benefit to this community do so because they also care about the community, as opposed to Matt Green's assessment that they're all on payroll to say that?
Yeah.
They do care. They do care.
No, I just-
They have different
Right,
view.
like we can at least level off at that level of respect.
You know what? I've never been one, and
Don't walk out, Matt. You're still welcome. Don't get that mad.
Oh, no, I'll be back.
Lauren, I've been part of some pretty rough and tumble debates over the years in this community, and if you've watched me, I don't think I've ever disparaged the intentions of the integrity of people
I never
who
thought you would disagree.
who
I wanted
disagree.
you to put that on the record, that's all.
I accept that there are people of goodwill who care about this community who will disagree on this issue.
lovely to hear.
That, I think that's
And,
healthy.
I have to say, even PJ, who had the rock hammer bid, or what is it, the hard rock bid, the rock hammer?
Hard rock,
Hammer
yeah,
rock,
rock
rock
hammer.
hammer, okay. The rock hammer bid, he even privately messaged me and said he loved our fight on the O Show the other day because it was passionate. I mean, so I absolutely respect that people who want a casino downtown think that it's good for the community. They think there's a net benefit in jobs. They think there's a net benefit in tax assessment. I can see that. And I agree with you, Terry, that this to me, I don't know if the Lair cast is necessarily emblematic of that sophisticated new conversation, but I agree with you. I think that It's bringing out in people, through all the different mediums we now have to discuss, social media being one of them. It's not some big blob that has an agenda. We have all these venues to discuss it, and I love to see it. I lived through Red Hill, not to the extent you did. You were in the middle of it. And the Pan Am Stadium. We've got Fred Eisenberger coming on next. He can talk about Pan Am battles. Ooh. But it's...
Somebody said ask you leave.
Yeah. So there have been, you have said more times than I can count that Hamilton politics works with live bullets, right? This is a tough town, and that's why I love it, because we're passionate. But I feel in this casino debate like we're sort of saying, but now we're talking about the worth of our city. Pan Am might have been about what was the best place for a stadium and the private business versus city business, and Red Hill might have been about the environment and about other issues. This, to me, is an issue about civic pride. What is our vision for our city? What do we think we have as our options? It's a different discussion, and I love it. And I think sophisticated is a great word for it, albeit maybe I have not been this evening. But I think that I love that way of ending it. Lauren, do you think so? Do you think we're getting sophisticated?
Lovely positive note.
Don't you think so?
Occasionally on the wrong side, but hopefully never on the side of wrong.
Oh, you are such a man of words. Well, Lauren needs a beverage and a smoke. And we'll get to our next guest, which will be Fred Eisenberger. Thanks so much, Terry Cooke, for being here. Yeah, I loved it. Awesome.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.